Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I am Ray, your humble reviewer. Today I'm going to be reviewing some recent and classic LitRPG audiobooks for you. Today I'm starting with Radioactive Evolution, a dystopian post-apocalyptic adventure by Richard Hummel, narrated by Armin Taylor and Annalise Rennie. Can you imagine that? Two for the price of one. Awesome blossoms. A book length of 15 hours and 27 minutes.
Okay, Scarlet, I'm ready. The rubble should hold it closed for a little while if you stand back. I'll try and take them out through the crack in the upper part of the door shattered on impact, angry rat muzzles sniffling the air. On second thought, to buy them some time, Jared walked closer, placed the muzzle of his phase pistol to the crack, and squeezed the trigger a few times. Muffled screeches and cries of rage assaulted his ears. The creature's rampage intensified, and Jared had to help Scarlet hold them back. Can you breathe fire yet? I mean, now that you're bigger. It'll probably help more than phase rounds, and that way I can save some ammo.
I will try.
Scarlet hesitated and took a tentative step forward. This was the first time she'd attempted to breathe fire, and Jared understood the trepidation.
All right, so just coming clean, the first thing I'm going to say about this book is I loved it. No, that's shortchanging it. I freaking loved this book. Freaking loved it. I generally use a couple of criteria to tell you if a book is really good or not. Well, at least for myself. The first is the sleep test. I don't know if I've ever explained this to you all, but if I fall asleep without prompting, it isn't a good sign. You know, when I go to bed, I usually leave a book on for about 15 minutes, and I pass out after that's over. I usually listen to it for a good 15, and then I'll drift off into sleep. If I fall asleep, no matter how tired I am, before that 15 minutes expired, it's not a good sign. If I stay awake, then it's good. If I listen to the whole 15 minutes and reset it for another 15, and then again, the book really has my interest. There's only been a few that I've tagged 3 or so times before I go to sleep. Usually when I go to bed, I'm pretty damn tired. I work a lot of hours. I struggle to get through things. And bedtime is very sacred in the Johnson household. Very sacred indeed. So I don't play with it. But, when I have a really good book, if my wife is not in bed when I go, I listen to the stories. I don't listen to soap operas, but I listen to the stories. And this is one of those books that I listened to like 3 times before I finally said, that's it, I got to go to sleep. And I did it in one day because I read the book within a 2-day period. It was 15 hours or so. So getting it done that first day, I know I listened to it at least 3 times before I finally said, heck with it, I'm going to bed. I need to get some sleep. And there's another thing that I've only had, happen a few times. And that's when my son, Prop Guy, goes for a ride with me. And he has me pause the book to update him on what has happened before he came into the story. And what the name of the book is, because he really wants to read it. He tells me it's good. That unto itself says a lot. When he kind of comes in cold partway through the story and says, man, that was really interesting, Dad. What was that book? What's it about? Give me some ideas. I want to go back and check this out after we're done with this car ride, because I know I'm not going to be with you for the rest of the story. And that's exactly what happened to me just recently. My mother has been very sick. She's been put into a nursing home, and we've gone back twice in the last week to see her. And the car ride there and back, we've been listening to books, and that was the only book where he stopped me and said, I need to know more about this because I'm going to listen to it after you're done. And that was really cool. So, and if you're wondering why the lateness, this is part of it. I don't know if you guys know about what's happening in my life right now, but we just adopted recently 2 young boys. Awesome. Greatness. It's really good. Everything's happy. My mother did have a horrible fall. She shattered one of her ankles. She's in her 70s, and she's had strokes. So she's now in the nursing home, and she does not want to stay there, and she does not want to live if she's going to stay there. So we've been going back and forth trying to keep her spirits up. And my wife just had double knee surgery the last 2 days. So I'm taking care of all 4 of my kids, the job, and everything else, juggling back and forth. So I haven't really had time to sit down to do this. So this is the first night I've had a chance to just kind of come in here and do this. And so I apologize for it coming out so late yet again. But like right now, my life has been crazy. Last week, my boss was on vacation and I had no time to do anything with all the other stuff happening. So I'm trying to keep up with that. So I apologize, and I'm going to just come right out right now and just say it again. I'm very sorry. My goal was to be ahead. I wanted to get a couple of things recorded well in advance of this. It just hasn't happened yet. I'm going to try very hard to get several shows under my belt so that I have time to do things and keep it up on a regular schedule. So my apologies. But anyway, Prop Guy, my son Thane, really, really loved this book. So I know this is an excellent book. It kept me riveted throughout. And I only had 2 drawbacks to the book, and they were minor. Okay, now first, and it's really not a drawback, this is what I would call like a light lit RPG. The elements are all there, but not in the way that they pop up continuously. They're not always in the way of stuff. There is a progression and increase to stats, but not a ton of the RPG stuff. And that's fine. I'm only throwing this out there as a heads up for people who like their stuff a lot more crunchy, a lot more heavy. Myself, I'm really cool with it. As long as the story has elements, I could care less. It qualifies for me. I like Gamelit just as much as I like LitRPG. Sometimes I go back and forth on which is, more accurate. There are some guys that they can just sit down and do things, with stats and numbers, and there are people like me who, if you ask me to create stats and numbers, I'm going to cry, go to bed, suck my thumb, wake up the next day, and pretend I never talked to you, because I'm not a number cruncher. I'm not. So, I can get that. If somebody out there is like me, why make more work for yourself? Why do that? I don't know. Okay, my only real issue was that the advancement / progression wasn't really refined very well. And by that, I mean it runs off of percentage points, which I completely get. Again, I'm terrible at math, and stats is hard, okay? So making things go easy by saying, well, this is a percentage of this, that's smart, because it never really goes into, problems, because you can say, well, I just put 50% of my power into this and boosted it up to here. But it never really detailed, and this is where the problem comes in, what the percentages did after they were applied, other than to say I applied 35% to this ability or stat. I followed it, but I needed some more mechanical work before it left the garage, you know what I mean? I think it just needed something else. Again, nothing major, but it needs noting, okay? Anyway, the book is set in a post-apocalyptic setting, which radiation threatens to wipe out the humans left on the Earth unless they receive periodic shots of nanites from the upper-class dudes that kind of escaped in the past to these big old floating cities. Life is hard down below. Very hard. Life above, not so much. The MC, Jared, is an explorer who scouts out areas looking for anything he can manage to salvage. He ends up being led into an area that gives him some pretty good loot after he follows the footsteps of another explorer who he finds dead. He managed to find amongst the treasures a few new nanite injectors and a mysterious stone before being forced to flee when the sounds of a large monster begins to make itself known. He later discovers that he has stolen a dragon's egg by accident and ends up bonding to it via a special set of nanites that he's used. And it's not very complicated. It's pretty simple. The story goes into it, and it goes along pretty well. I honestly thought that this was the way that Dragon Seed, if you listen to SBT, was going to go. But that book really emphasized the whole first part of becoming a dragon rider before you ever get to meet the dragon. Here we get to see the dragon go from hatchling into horror as it grows and maxes itself out pretty quickly. There is no question as to whether it's going to max out pretty quick, because it goes from being a little teeny dragon to a big one pretty fast. And it's not a spoiler. You're going to know that because it's one of the main characters. The interplay between Jared and Scarlet, the dragon, is really well done, and it feels natural and organic. They play very well off one another, and this is the best part to the story. To me, the only time the story slightly bogs down is when it focuses on other creatures, like the mer people or the other dragons. I get that they both need some sort of a love interest or, being with their own kind, especially Scarlet. her whole job is to bring back dragons into the world. But the book really flows when it's just them against the world itself. I think the nanite interactions are fun, and they were a great way to deal with dystopian issues that they were facing. You don't see that in very many books. This was pretty cool. It was a good idea, great concept. The narration is just absolutely banging. The tag team of Armin Taylor and Annalise Rennie, just unstoppable. Okay, like Jared and Scarlett, they played very well off each other. Taylor has a presence and voice that makes me wonder why he is not sought after more often. Aside from Hummel, the only two other LitRPG authors I can think of that have used him are James Hunter and Chris Carney. He needs more work. I mean, this guy just kills in this business. Rennie brings a nice sardonic attitude to the dragon and lets you believe the dragon can be wise beyond her years while still being played as a very young creature. So it's more like I was just born, but I know more than you. And how is that possible? Well, let me explain it to you, sucker, because I'm going to lay down some facts. She does it really well. It's pretty cool to see her do this, or I should say to listen to her do it. It's a nice balancing act. Very nice. And it was good to hear her voicing Scarlett. She just made this as much fun as Taylor. And I look forward to the next installment and hearing them both play off each other some more. It was just a really good repartee between them. The banter was very, very real, I think. It was very organic. For me, this was I couldn't put it down after I got started once kind of book. And I think you'll feel the same way. The book ended in a nice solid place. The characters were well fleshed out, as was the world. And that's important. You got to have good characters, a good world, and a good system. Everything worked out really, really well. Although I did have some questions that might not have been fully answered, like how did all the animals get nanites? Or how do they keep getting them? That's the bigger question. I don't know if that was ever answered in there. I don't remember it, but that's one of those questions that I have that maybe gets answered in the next book. My final score is this is a really good one. Hummel really, really, for a debut author, I'm very stunned and impressed. I say all the time, there are people out there that they should be writing. He's one of them. This was just a really fun book, and I don't know who hasn't liked it. I know that I've heard some people say either they love it or they hate it. I don't see how you can hate this book. I love this book. My son loved this book, and for him to say that, and my son is one of those people, let me just say, prop guy, from the time he was seriously 2 years old, he was reading. He's autistic. He's the kid that's 15 now, and he goes to college. He's been going to college since he was 12 to get his degree, so he's not stupid. He's been reading books. Anytime we would go somewhere, we would be in Disney World. He's reading a book. Be at the Cub Scouts with the Pinewood Derby Racers. He's reading a book. He wins. He couldn't care less about that. He's reading a book. The kid has read books his entire life. He knows story. And when he asks me about something, I listen. It's one of those things that you really just kind of take note of because it caught his ear. It caught his interest. I know this is good and solid. So I don't even have to question it at all. I'm really down with this. I think that this is a fantastic story. So for me, it's 8.5 stars. It was just an absolutely fun ride. This one right here, my next book, is Dan the Adventurer, Gold, Girls, and Glory, Book 2 by Hondo Jenks, narrated by the amazing Andrea Parsnow, with a book length of 10 hours and 8 minutes.
Dan smiled, drawing his lungs full of the cold, fresh air blowing up out of the pines. The countryside surrounding Penn State was breathtakingly gorgeous, especially with the autumn foliage burning orange and red with the changing of the leaves. To either side of the road, the forest spoke in birdsong and the scrabbling chatter of squirrels. They wound downhill into a dim forest of old timber and clumped fern. Here and there, among the columnar trunks, lichen-spotted boulders sat like forgotten godlings. Dan breathed in the good, earthy smell of moss and loam. The forest made him feel alive and fueled his inner barbarian. He was tired of town, tired of people and noise and drama. Suddenly, even the road felt like a leash. He wanted to plunge away into the forest and live.
Jeez. Here's another great book I have to review this week. These were not the books that I wanted to review. I had other books that are in the wings that I've started and finished and need to review. But these were like such awesome stories. Like each one just said, nope, you got to do this one now. You can't let it slide. Go and do these stories. So there's other stories out there that you'll be seeing me get to that I've already listened to like 4 weeks ago. This is one of those ones I just couldn't let it go. I had to get this out to you guys as soon as possible because I really, really like Dan the Adventure. It's pure, cheesy fun. It's kind of like Conan mixed with a Saturday morning adult cartoon. It's silly, fun, and sexy, but definitely not made for kids. This is a brilliant series from concept to completion on the page, or in this case, in my ears. I love every second I get of Dan. Hondo Jinx is a madman. This is a great concept. It's brilliant, and it just totally works. Totally works. So this time around, we leave the campus and go to visit Dan's new in-laws. Now, speaking as a married man, there are few words in life that will send a shiver down your spine faster than the I-L word. Okay? That word is dangerous. It's scary. No one wants to hear it's coming your way. Ever. And all those people that say that they just love their in-laws, either they've been drinking or they are weird. Because I don't know how you can do it. Anyway, I can understand when he would rather face down like the mafioso type that's been trying to get him and his girls because he kicked their butts at the beginning of the story, rather than go on a vacation in the forest to meet his new mom and pops, the elves. Because I would rather face a dragon, unarmed, bare naked, covered in butter, than go spend the weekend. Well, you get my idea. Okay, anyway. And there's a lot that happens in this book. Dan gets to meet his D-bag, dipped in an a-hole brother-in-law. And I mean that in the nicest way. I mean, his brother-in-law is a jerk unto the 10th power. He gets the cold shoulder from his new mama, and the super stink eye from his pappy-in-law. His sister-in-law, she seems pretty cool. In fact, I don't know. Like I said, I only get the audiobooks. I don't read the other books. I don't know if Dan will eventually end up adding the sister-in-law to his harem, but it seems like a big, distinct possibility. So I could see that happening at some point in the future. But it's all standard marriage stuff. But soon the fun all comes to an end when an extra-dimensional set of monsters start ripping up the forest, and a band of raiders also simultaneously decides to wipe out an entire race of elves. A race that Dan, ever the barbarian, wants as little to do with as possible, because he has crap to do elsewhere, namely stopping the extra-dimensional beast. That's his quest. He has a goal. Go to this place, kill these monsters, finish, and go home. That's all he wants to do. Just go there, kill them, and hike it out of there. He doesn't have that opportunity, though, because he's got to go back with this side quest. The side quest technically becomes the main quest, and soon he's helping these fire elves rebuild, regroup, and regrow as a race, as a people. And he does it kicking and screaming the whole way there, which I totally get. If you want to look at it as a barbarian, he's not going to like the elves because they're magical. He's not going to like them because they're very weak in their attitudes and their physical, build. There's nothing about them that would scream, I'm going to help these people on the surface. But he does end up changing his mind. He does come around to a whole new way of thinking. As I will say in another segment later on, the sex scenes are just as engrossing as the battles. There is always a purpose behind each one, and poor Dan has the onerous burden of having to please his ladies while fighting the advances of horny red-faced hobgoblin girl and defending the fire elf keep. Now, one does wonder where he finds time to sleep. And one thing that kind of surprised me was just how little we get to see Dan level as he goes through this living hell. we do get to see him level, but it's only once in the book. And I would have thought, like, with all the stuff that happens, he'd like gain like 4 levels or something like that, just dealing with the extra dimensionals, not mentioning all the other stuff with the elves. Because there's a lot of stuff he goes through. The guy goes through hell. And he finds time a little bit for some nookie, but very little for sleep. And believe me, brother, I am there, I understand it, and I sympathize. Now, I am going to say, as awesome a writer as Hondo Jinx is, this is Andrea's show. Man, she is in complete command here, and there is no question of her masculinity. None, as she helms her Dan puppet through the storyline. Okay, I just talked about how amazing she was in KT Hanna's Fragments series, the Somnia Online, the Fragments book. But I have to say, this is some of her best work. She places so much emotion into one little word. Please. Just please. That it really hit me deep in my feels. There is a scene where the Hobgoblin Warrior Maiden is literally begging Dan to have his way with her. And she just says that one word. One word. Please. Just that single please made me want to say, damn it, Dan, if you can't pony up, I'm going to go do it. This girl needs some loving. Truthfully, I am really not into red-faced, muscular green girls. That's not my flavor. If you want to know the truth, I like short, pale, dark-haired chicks. It's been my modus operandi up until the moment I met my crazy wife and fell in love with her and got married. And I say that with all respect, but my wife is whoop, and I have always fallen for crazy chicks. So, short, pale, dark hair, and that's my stuff. And green and muscular and red-faced with tusks, not for me. I could see where you would have an aversion to that, but at the same time, I know that you don't, Dan, and so there's no reason not to go out and just do the deed. It was really hard because while she was definitely not my type, Andrea filled that one little word with so much emotion. It moved me mentally and emotionally. And that is narration power. Narration strength. I mean, she's got it. That is a mastery that few ever achieve. And I say it repeatedly. Andrea puts so much emotion to her characters that they become real. I have no doubt, none whatsoever, that one day she's going to go overboard and she's going to end up having a Purple Rose of Cairo situation on her hands. It's a movie, people. It's a movie, Purple Rose of Cairo. Go look it up, watch it. It ain't half bad. It's pretty good. But I'll give you the idea of what I'm talking about, just so you don't have to go crazy. There's an actor who portrays a character in this movie, and his portrayal is so real that the characters on screen literally come to life and step out of the movies. And it happens all across the country. Wherever this movie's playing, this one guy, he just put so much into it. His character became real, and comes down out of the film and goes out and experiences life. That is what I think is going to happen with Parsnow. I can just see it. One day I'm going to be listening to a book, and the next thing I know, there's going to be this great big green butt in my face. And, like I say, any other time I might be cool, but green butts just aren't my thing. I'm not Captain Kirk. Sorry. So, she better tone it back just a touch. Just cut it back, okay? The book is amazingly good fun. It is action from start to finish. There are werewolf transformations. I love werewolves. They're some of my favorite monsters. You can see I got the Trick or Treat special shirt on today, just because it's a horror book. Everything about this book is just fun. And it does make me think of Thundar and Conan and, Call, all the big barbarians, that you would ever want to. And trust me, Thundar trumps Conan anytime. Just because he's post-apocalyptic and has a magic sword. Fun. This is the same thing. And I wish Dan had a really good sword. His other sword got broken, and he's kind of swordless right now. I kept waiting for the the fire elves to kind of pass one over to him, but it didn't happen. I was very stunned. Anyway, it just, Dan shows you what a modern barbarian is like. It's very fun. I'm loving this series. It is solid as granite. My final score is 8.45 stars. Parsnow just steals the show, and she brings it to life. I literally mean there is life infused into the narration. It's so good, it's scary. But again, barbarians are scary. So just watch out, because you may get sucked into this world and find yourself there for real. All right, guys. Well, I think this is my final segment that I've recorded for tonight, so I'm going to go shave. But anyway, I'll see you next week. Hopefully, I'm going to try and get in it. I'm going to sneak. I'm going to sneak and cheat and record maybe like 8 segments at once and just have 2 shows ahead of time, if possible. That way, I've got some breathing space to work with, and that way we're not missing things just because I'm so backed up with everything. And again, I do want to apologize for that. I'm going to say it now because I've already recorded the other parts of the show, the ending parts, because I've already recorded my SBT stuff and the thank you very much for coming by kind of segment end. So, you know, just bear with me. I'm trying to get this under control and take care of things. Life has just not been kind with its time as I've been going through lately. So, thank you. Take care. God bless. And get this book. It is such a good book. It's such a good series. I could probably go higher. I'm I'm horrible with numbers. So, I don't know if I even justifiably gave this thing the proper score, because I really love this book. And it is so real and deep for a barbarian. Thank you. All right. Next up, I'm going to do Siphon, A Touch of Power, Book 1 by Jay Boyce. Narrated, and I'm going to massacre this name, so forgive me, Samara Nimi. I can't do it, so I'm sorry, Samara. With a book length of 10 hours and 4 minutes.
System scan commencing. Initializing profile. Traveler, welcome to Andara. You have been placed in the country of Kahoi. Good luck on your adventures. Jade stared blankly at the floating blue box in front of her, trying to make sense of it. The room was eerily quiet, and she glanced around startled. Gone was the constant hum of machines that were keeping her alive and measuring her vitals. In a panic, she swiped at the air to get rid of the boxes so that she could look around, only then noticing that she could wave her arms without obstruction. Utterly flabbergasted, she paused, staring at the simple room that was revealed with the absence of the blue box hogging her vision. Gone was the sterilized white hospital room, and in its place was what resembled a dorm room. It had a small bed with a nightstand, a bare desk, a small dresser, and 2 closed doors, one beside the bed and one across the room.
So, I have to say, Mountain Dale Press is really kicking some serious butt. I would have thought that after Advent, it would have been hard to have a follow-up that would do quite as well. But Siphon manages to keep up the pressure that Xander Boyce instituted when he set that bar so high. You know, that was the first book Mountain Dale put out. Mountain Dale has taken the second Boyce. I don't know if they're siblings, married. I don't know. It doesn't say. I just go by names. They may not be related in any way other than they just share a last name. But the Boyces bring their A games. And if I was an established writer out there right now, I'd be scared. I mean, really scared, because these two have some serious talent. So let me tell you about Jay for just a second. Her style is pretty laid back. This is one of those books that does not focus much on fighting, and you barely notice that there's little blood being shed. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a few monster attacks, but overall, the book is about a girl from Earth who is always on the brink of dying and ends up in a magical realm with game-like rules after she shuffles off her mortal coil. So how bad is it for her? Well, she literally has to learn to eat and walk. Luckily for her, Jade, she has the ability to siphon stats and skills from the people she touches. So there's no leveling. Like, she doesn't go from being a level 1 siphon to a level 10 siphon. That's not in the cards for this book. Here, it's just like you get your stats and you just increase them unto themselves. There's no level, no gaining of power, so to speak, other than increasing your skills to whatever they are until they're maxed out. And that would be the same thing with their physical attributes. So this allows her to just pretty much learn anything and increase her stats far more easily than if she had to go about doing it the normal route. In fact, when she first appears there, she's pretty much a skeletal being, and she ends up being referred to as being a zombie just from her appearance. So it's pretty fortunate she can do this because she's pretty weak when she first arrives. So the book is a fun, dare I say it, slice of life. Yeah, I don't like slice of life. In which we basically just follow the MC, Jade, around as she meets people and sucks them dry of their powers, so to speak. Now, there were a few flaws, and I'm going to point these out because I really like this book. The book is very inventive, very ingenious. It is fun, but I did have a couple of issues with a couple of things. They are not game changers in any way, shape, or form. They don't make me change my mind about what the book is, what it's about, how it's perceived. I loved the book. I think it was fantastic, but there were a couple of things I just have to talk about. Okay? First, there are a ton of secondary characters. So many that towards the end, that there was a point where Jade was just rattling them all off, and it felt like the end of Romper Room. Now, I don't know how many of you out there even know what the hell Romper Room is, but when I was a kid, there was a show called Romper Room. And at the end of the show, the school teacher who had the kids in the class would come out and she'd hold this magic mirror up and it would vanish and you'd see her face through there and she'd say, "Oh, I see Bobby and Tommy and Joyce and Susie and Andrea and Annalise and Charles and Dave and Ray and Ramon," and you would just sit there and wait every week and hope they said your name. Well, it was just like this endless list of names. And this is what it came off as. It was really at such a point where I realized that I had no clue who 99% of the people that she was rattling off were. Because in my head, as I was listening to the story, I would assign characters by their jobs. So I would say there's librarian, there's the spy master, here's a soldier, here's the count, so whatever they did for a living or what they were known for, as the king or the prince, that's what I went with because there were just too many and the names were not, like, how do I say this? They didn't stand out. Like they were all just Bob, Dave, Tom, and, there were a couple that weren't, average names. But for the most part, they weren't anything you would say, "Oh, I remember that name because it was so crazy or so strange." You don't do that. It was kind of just like, what? So, and again, I'm not trying to beat this up, but they tended to get lost in the mix. Like I said, I went by the titles rather than the characters. Secondly, there is very, very little conflict in the book. And by that, I mean nothing that Jade does is wrong. Now, there is very little conflict in the book to start with. I mean, there's very few fights. I mean, minimal fighting. But that's fine. I don't need to see somebody stabbing or getting killed every 10 minutes in a book, as long as there's something that drives the story forward. And I think that the story did drive forward pretty well. She carried the story with just her search for, siphoning and, learning new things and doing magic. But the problem is that nothing that Jade does is wrong in anybody's eyes. She is Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. And all I can say is if someone acted like the way that she does around me, that she does everybody else, like if she came up to me and was like, "Oh, hey," and put me in the head or took my library card and wouldn't give it back, she would be due for a right smack upside the back of the head. My dad would never put up with this kind of stuff. Like she'd had a boot in her behind and down the street before she knew what happened. And she'd have been siphoning his footprint off her butt because she's very childish, very, very childish in her acting. And I have to admit, it fits the character because you have to remember, she's had very little interaction with people prior to coming into this world. She's been locked in a bed. So, the first minute she gets out, she's going to do a lot of crazy stuff. But everybody overlooks it. And there's never a reason for it, because it's like as soon as they meet her, okay, we forgive you for all your flaws. That's not the way it works. Not the way it works in real life. I would have serious issue. Like, seriously, I would want to throw her down a flight of stairs for being so entitled the way she behaves. It was not cool, and it was not happiness going through that whole process. I think she needed to grow up a whole lot. And this whole Team Jade stuff, I just didn't get it. Again, like I say, her behavior precluded me from saying, yeah, Jade deserves to have these people gather their wagons around her at every opportunity. I didn't get it at all. I really did not. The only person who seemed to even kind of struggle against her at all was at the very beginning. And you would say, well, that's because she wasn't pretty, she wasn't cute, she hadn't shown any kind of a special ability, but it was the guy who was at the Jade Dragon Inn, the whatever you want to call it. It was kind of like a dormitory for everybody, where she was trying to get a room, and he's like, look, you got 3 days. Either, prove your worth or get out. Pay up or shut up. And, he was the only one that did it, but, like, right afterwards, like, next day, he's Team Jade, and I just didn't see that was the case, okay? I just did not see that she was deserving of that kind of fanatical devotion. Now, my biggest beef, and again, I'm going to just say this, I really liked the book. I really did. But I have to be honest with you. My biggest beef is that this is an audiobook. And there were a lot of places that just went on and on endlessly about stats and abilities. They were repeated ad nauseum. Ad nauseum. Thankfully, there was a point where it just kind of stopped saying, you have touched so-and-so. Would you like to siphon the strength, the intelligence, the luck, the wisdom, blah, 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 over and over again? That kind of petered out, okay? I think really with Audible, any kind of an audiobook, doing that sort of stuff is fine in a regular book, an ebook, because I could either skim it, read it, or just skip it altogether, depending on what my whims are. With Audible, I am trapped. I have to listen to that. And it's not fun listening to like the same things 13 times in a row. This is one of those things where they've kind of trimmed back. I think that the LitRPG writers have learned, and they kind of make adjustments with their audiobooks. Like Charles Dean, smart guy. He puts all of his changes and stats at the end of the chapters. And it basically says, here comes the stats. If you want to skip ahead, just skip to the next chapter and ignore this crap altogether. And I think that works really well. Now, because we weren't looking at her stats as often as she was draining them, and really all they needed to do was say she gained some levels in magic, she gained some levels in this, unless there was massive changes where she suddenly just had all this stuff across the board go up. We didn't need to hear about it. And if so, again, the Charles Dean move would have been the best way to go about doing this. So, and I'll be honest with you, there were about 3 times that I literally jumped those parts. I just hit my button, took my phone, skipped ahead, 3 touches for 30 seconds. Once it was done, I backed it up a little bit, just so I didn't miss anything, and went on with my life. And I never do that, but it did get on my nerves after a bit. This is why I will not listen to like Thoreau's Walden on Audible, because I can't just stand the way he lists everything that he does there. It drives me crazy. I didn't want to read it when I was in college, and when I got out of college and said, I'm going to sit down and try to read this book for itself without having all this crap hanging over my head, what I have to apply here or read into it or whatever. I just want to read the book and see what I feel about it. And I feel like it was just this wordy laundry list of stuff after a period of time. Wasn't great. And that sort of stuff bums me out when I'm listening to a story. And this is one of the stories where it was a bit overwhelming, to be honest with you. And this is my biggest beef. The other stuff was just me saying, oh, here, by the way, I'm going to throw this at you. This was a big beef, okay? So Charles Dean has it down. Maybe follow that lead next book around. Samara, excuse me, a newbie to the LitRPG neck of the woods, narrates his tale very well And I think she does a decent job. She reads out the story in a very sublime way, very mellow, very relaxed. But when she has to, she does manage to amp it up, such as when Jade cries out for help. This was way better than the average narration, and I think she could find a home here if she wanted to. The only thing... I don't know how to even word this. The only thing I had to question... So I don't know if it was Samara or if it was Jay who did it, but there was a scene right towards the end of the book when she goes to her first class. Jade is going to her first class, and she's looking things over, and there's these magical light bulbs glowing in this alcove, and they were in... Some of these glowing balls were in what she said were braziers. Now, I don't know, if Jay Boyce miswrote the word and just typed in brazier and no one caught it, but I want to say I went back and re-listened to it like 3 times just so I know I didn't imagine it was brazier. I wasn't thinking of boobs. I have read, some of the Jamie Hawk stuff recently. So, I wasn't thinking boobs, brazier. I went back and listened to it, and it absolutely is 100%. It is the word brazier. So either they have these hot glowing coals in a brazier, or it's supposed to be a brazier. And I don't know if it's a brazier or not, because I'm not from that magical world. They do some crazy stuff there. But I do have to say that somebody flubbed it a little bit, because all I could think of now were these hot coals hanging in some sort of indestructible bra. So, I don't know. Think about it. Go back and look. If you've heard it too, say something to me. Say it down below, because it is not my imagination, and it did throw me off. So I'm not sure if it was Boyce who wrote the wrong word or if Samara said the wrong word. It did make me laugh. Gave me a good giggle. That was the only flub that I could note audibly from the whole book. So again, if Samara did do something wrong, it was so minor, but it stood out to me. Excuse me. It did stand out to me. So, whatever you think, it is what it is. But just be aware, you may hear about some hot glowing braziers. Now, while it might seem like I was totally crushing this book, I really liked it. There was a lot going on. And I think with some really great tweaking, it would be really fantastic. But there were a couple of the problems that I had. Now, like I say, I'm coming off of Xander Boyce with Advent from Mountaindale, and I'm not trying to compare them. It's apples to apples, apples to oranges, oranges to oranges. I'm just going, the first book was amazing. Mountaindale has a winner here. There's no question in my mind that they have a winner here. But it's not quite to that same level just because of a couple of the things I said. Secondary characters did not stand out to me at all. And that's a problem. That's a problem. I think that secondary characters should not just be, the milkman, the librarian, and the king, and, whoever. They need to be a little bit more than that, but that's how I had them in my head, and I couldn't distinguish who was who. Like down the list, there were like so many characters, I couldn't have told you who they were. So that needed to be there. But my biggest problem was how nothing that Jade did was wrong. I think she was a very childish acting person, and I think that the things that got overlooked were only overlooked because that was just part of the story. Real people wouldn't have looked things over quite so easily with her. So I'm going to just say, as good as the one is, I'm going to just say this on its own, standing here unto itself, it's an 8.1. It's still a good story. A couple of little tiny things, if especially the audio stuff, if it gets reworked, it would probably be higher, because that was my biggest beef throughout the thing, was the constant, I seriously think that there were probably 10,000 words that were added to the story just by the repeating of, you have touched so-and-so, do you want to? And, here's the list of the stats, here's the list of this, and going through it over and over and over and over again. And then after that, it was like every time that she increased something, all the stuff got read out. It was just overwhelming. And I would just say, just list the stuff that got changed. If everything's changed, then make a note and say, here's why it was changed, and then put that at the end of the story, at the end of the chapter, because that works way better. And for me, if I want to listen to it, I can, and if I don't, I won't. Like with Charles Dean, I do skip those sometimes just because I know what's been changed and added already. And I try to not do that more than twice in a row. So just some suggestions, but right now, 8.1, it's a solid book. It's really fun. Even if it is a slice of life, I have to say it was an enjoyable book. Okay, so the next book I'm doing is actually my Sound Booth Spotlight. Hooray! This is what this whole thing's about. Anyway, I'm going to be doing Supers X Heroes 2, a Gamelit space opera by Jamie Hawk, narrated by Justin Thomas James, Jeff Hayes, Yvonne Sin, Carly Crawford, with a book length of 6 hours and 11 minutes.
Once Charm had blown her alertness power into the faces of Gale and Twitch, we all started to get feeling back into our limbs. Before the voices returned, we were managing to push ourselves out of bed.
The Nihilists?
Twitch said, her brow furrowing as she looked at Charm.
You're certain?
Well, maybe.
Maybe,
Gale said, her voice rising more than she should have allowed it.
You hear something?
One of the voices outside said, and Gale held a hand to her mouth, eyes full of guilt. We have to act, now, I said. Twitch pulled up her screens and started moving numbers around, but frowned.
Nothing makes sense here,
she said. What do you mean?
It's like it's the same programming, the same code, but in a different order that should be wrong. I can't figure it out.
Shit. I ran my hand through my hair, glanced at Gale, and asked, Any ideas? She grimaced.
Hit him with everything we've got?
Well, like I said, this is my Sound Booth Spotlight for the week. This is Super X Heroes 2. In honor of the SBT team taking on some, shall we say, burlesque style names, I've decided that I will refer to Justin Thomas James from this point forth in this review as Smoke Wagon James. One, because he has that nice smoky voice that kind of clouds your mind as he speaks. And the other is that because a smoke wagon is just another name for a handgun. I think the euphemism is pretty clear. And the connotations of that, the connotations should just go unquestioned. Don't even ask about it. Now, I will be reviewing with my own burlesque name in honor of the SBT team. I will be going by the nom de plume of Belly Bucker. You can just figure out what that means too, if you like. I even had to grow this here awesome burlesque mustache for this here segment. So don't anticipate seeing it again. This is just a little too much. Anyway, I have to say that I really enjoyed this book much more than I did the first one. Not that I didn't like the first one at all. I liked it a lot. It had some great pacing, and the storyline just kind of came together this time around. I think a little bit better and smoother than the first time. We get to see Breaker do some really new things and add a member to the slowly growing harem. The only negative was that one of the most interesting characters, Charm, is absent for a good chunk of the book. Charm is kind of one of my favorite characters. She's a lot like Andrea from, the Super Sales on Superheroes. Either you get it or you don't. Naturally, the book revolves around the remaining members of the team trying to rescue Charm. So it's all bloody good fun, and I enjoyed it from start to finish. I honestly think that a bonus is that these books are, if you want to know the truth of it, the really good thing about these is that they're short. They're very short in length, under 7 hours, which means I have no problem finishing up these books in like one day. They're nice little quick, boom, 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 short stories. I can get them in and out, enjoy them as they are for what they are, and then it's all said and done with, and I can go on to something new. And I really appreciate that. It helps me a lot. So, I can finish these books up in one day, or less, technically. So, it helps me get through reviews, and it keeps me entertained at the same time. I like it because the book is light and fast-paced. Now, the sex scenes, I have to admit, are hot and steamy, and the fight scenes are fast and furious. Well, I hope I didn't just step on a trademark with that. I don't want to get into, like, a movie battle, with, like, The Rock coming after the Ray. with my mustache, he would have to really come at me hard, because he's bald and he don't have a stash. And I think if you got a beard and a stash, you can take out a bald dude anytime. That's just what I'm saying. So anyway, the funniest part of the book is pretty much how Breaker keeps being offered sex and has to turn it down due to some outside factor. And when he actually tries to woo, a bedmate on his own, which is like kind of against what he wants to do, he's just kind of like, well, I've got to do this, so I'll go and I'll talk this baby down. It doesn't go as planned. And that is the best part of this novel. It's the desire competing with the denial, just as it does in real life. The sex scenes are tastefully done, and I have to say that those two burlesque type ladies really know how to paint a mental picture. So if you're yelling at me to tell you a little bit about the book itself, here's where I do that. Well, it kind of picks up right where the other left off. So if you read the first book, you know that they went into a little black hole, thought they were going to die, found themselves somewhere else. The team finds himself in another dimension, which is where they really end up. A place where their powers don't work right, or they don't work at all. Once Charm gets snagged, the team does do their best to find her, but it doesn't stop Breaker from stealing Quinjets or fighting in an arena to kind of level up along the way. I think Breaker actually grows a lot in this book, and it was nice to see him dedicated to his team of ladies. He does a lot of things that shows he's there for them more than he is for himself. The SBT sound team really knocked this out of the park. Like I said, the ladies, Yvonne, Sin, and Carly Crawford, know how to make Hot and Bothered look like it was taking a nap when Horny and Ready to Go came in and took its place. The only thing missing was the Bow Chicka Wow Wow music when they started to get it on. Smoke Wagon, you are pretty sweet on the keyboards, I hear. You might want to add that in next time for a little bit of flavor. Just a little bit of flavoring. Yeah, and Breaker made the move on Charm. Bow Chicka Wow Wow, Bow Chicka Wow Wow. I think he could pull it off. It would be like really classy, really classy. But if you want to know the truth of it, I could listen to these women's dulcet tones and just be mesmerized very easily. So I give them a lot of credit. Smoke Wagon James manages to play Breaker as a dude who is just a little bit unsure of himself, but coming into his own finally. He's just beginning to get out of his brother's shadow when he meets his brother and steps right back in. But Breaker's awkwardness, it's slowly sloughed off as he comes into his own. His own what? Wait. No, I did not just go there. I'm sorry. Blame the stash. Just blame the stash. I've got to go shave this off. Either way, I'm glad I recorded this segment first, or I think I'd be out of control by the time the show was really finished. Maybe I'll tape the end segment next and then shave it off, but it's got to go. It's already been way too long right here. So, like I say, I feel like Chet Sandberg, before he shaved his off. Either way, this was a real blast of a book. I enjoyed it. SBT brought their A game and converted it into a whole alphabet. So the final score is 8.3 stars. Jamie Hawk really has this down, and he's right up there with me saying I like Harmon Cooper or MSE or Jason Cipriano. Those are the things that really were, those are the writers that he kind of reminds me of. It's the same kind of a feel. Not that I'm saying he copies them or mimics them, just that his style is similar in some ways. With harem stuff especially, you kind of have that come up one way or another sometimes. So, basically, he's a really good writer. It's fun, and it's short. It's a nice little candy bar. It's a candy bar that you really want to eat and savor. So 8.3 star, guys. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this show as much as I did, reviewing some of the books here. There are some amazing books, as always, on today's show. I hope you give them all a good try. All I can say is, I know I had fun listening to them, so I know you will too. I guess all I have left to say is thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen to the show. If you want to support us, you can. You can like the LitRPG Podcast Facebook page or the YouTube page, or just share and like the video. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed the show. As always, I ask please leave comments or suggestions below, and feel free to tell me whatever you like. I like the feedbacky. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Yep, that's all of them. Remember, always leave a review for a book that you've read or listened to. They really help the authors. The more reviews, the better it is. For the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast, I'm Ray. Keep listening.